Thank you for listening to the Gateway to the Rockies podcast from Visit Aurora from the rafters of the Stanley Marketplace. This is the show dedicated to telling the stories of Aurora, Colorado. Hi there, I'm Dave, the Senior Marketing Manager for Visit Aurora. The culinary world is a beautiful convergence of art, science, and the demands of our senses. Dissatisfied by the options available to those with food allergies and intolerances, Gina Di Tullio created Gina's Kitchen, a dynamic Aurora restaurant where creativity and dietary inclusivity are pillars. Good morning, Gina.
Good morning, David. Thank you so much for having me.
The name Di Tullio evokes images of a big Italian family dinner. I don't imagine a lot of that was dairy or gluten-free. Is that an accurate guess of what life was like growing up?
Absolutely. I think that was probably one of my most sad realizations when I ended up dairy-free and gluten-free, was that the Italian food was going to be a struggle to try to figure out how to make and or find. So,
Gina, you didn't start off as a chef by trade. Your path was in the performing arts.
Yes.
You started your personal gluten, egg, peanut, and dairy-free quest, as you put it, in 2011. What was the catalyst or impetus that caused that change in your lifestyle initially?
Well, I have a chronic cough, and I've had it since I was 31 years old, and Western medicine couldn't really figure out what was wrong. So I finally went to, actually I was working at a chiropractic's office, and everyone who came in with different ailments would get allergy tests. And so I thought, well, I don't probably have an issue with gluten, but I'm going to try it anyway, just get rid of it just to see. And I took the test, and I was indeed allergic to or intolerant to gluten, dairy, egg, peanuts. So that changed my life a lot. And I am a baker just by hobby. I was. And so I wasn't able to do any of the fun things I wanted to anymore. So it just kind of led me down a new chemistry path of trying to figure out how to bake for myself. And then I ended up doing it for the public as well.
Did a light bulb go off after that allergy test? Was there that's why I felt bad for all these years, or had these specific issues? Was it kind of a luminous moment for you?
Absolutely. Allergies affect people in different ways, and intolerances, and especially gluten. It can be skin or it can be joints. Excuse me. For me, it's brain fog. And I would find myself, out in Walmart, not knowing how I got there or where I put my keys, or finding stuff in the freezer, just really weird things that after I eliminated the gluten, they made sense because I was no longer doing them. And then one time I got accidentally poisoned, I call it, but I accidentally ingested gluten, and I started feeling all of those things again. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so weird that that's what the familiarity was. So,
on the other side of that, when you eliminated gluten from your diet initially, what was the impact? Did you notice a great impact immediately, or was it a slow realization of, okay, I'm feeling better, my life has improved generally?
It's a slow one because it takes a long time for the body to repair after especially years of ingesting food that you're not supposed to. So I had leaky gut, and that's something that, months later I would start to feel better. And so it was more of a retroactive, wow, this is kind of cool, versus, oh yeah, immediately. Some people, though, if they have the more gastric issues with gluten, they'll notice it immediately because their stomach stops hurting. So
as you start baking for yourself and developing the idea of recipes for yourself, what was your initial experience like going to local restaurants and grocery stores and the offerings that they had even, 15 years ago?
Well, restaurants were pretty much null. I couldn't actually go out, and it was very disappointing to me. Grocery stores, because I have multiple food allergies, that was also a struggle. Most of the cookies that were gluten-free would also have eggs or milk or both. And the product that was gluten, dairy, egg, and peanut-free usually was very salty, or it had a lot of fat in it, or it was just dry. So it was abysmal, and I realized I was going to have to figure it out myself. So I went home, and I was like, well, I'll just make cookies. Well, that's not happening either, because I had to find a flour blend that worked, or one that didn't have any dairy in it, because most of them have dairy. So it was just a kind of a journey of experimentation at that point.
You began that experimentation with your own recipes, sharing them with friends and family initially. When did you know this is something I could be doing to help a lot more people?
So years and years ago, I had a sandwich business called the Gorilla Grinders, and I sold them out on the street corners at Champa and 18th. And I didn't last long. Quiznos put me out of business pretty quickly. But I knew at that point that I had to have a commissary if I was going to do anything publicly. So my friend came to me in 2015, I think, and he said, there's this new Cottage Food Act where you can do this in your home if you want to start selling these again. So at first I was like, I'm not going down that road again. And then I thought, if I can do it from my house, why not? And it probably will never grow and I'll never end up having to use a commissary. So I'll just start it here and see what happens. So that was in 2015 when I just decided to try. I had one cookie and one granola that I was making for myself. Yeah. And so I started to sell those and see how how people were receptive to it, and it kind of blew up.
It's a big jump going from what is essentially a personal passion to making it a business, your livelihood. Was there a light bulb moment that inspired you to open Gina's Kitchen and the iteration of what it is now?
Absolutely. Gina's Kitchen Delights, which was the cottage bakery, grew out of my house. And in order to find a space, I would have to work in a commissary again, as I said. No commissaries accommodate all of those allergies. Yeah. So the first trek was to find a space or to buy a space and make a commissary for myself and other people like me to try to sell the goods. And then I thought, well, if I do, I want a little storefront or a stand where I can sell the baked goods for people to come in. And then I thought, everyone loves my hot food too. I'm a caterer. I do weddings, I do parties, I have my own parties and people come for the food. So why not expand and just do a storefront that offers hot food as well as baked goods?
What's the cliche? Obstacles only exist when you take your eyes off the goal. You mentioned the fact that there weren't commissaries that could accommodate what you needed to deliver. When it came to establishing the business, what were some of the other surprises that sprung up during that process of opening a quote unquote brick and mortar location?
Right away, I thought that I would need to join a collective or a community kind of effort in order to get my food out and to get my word out, because I don't see myself as a business person. I see myself as a baker. Right. And so, the actual advertising part I thought would be very burdensome. So I joined the collective over at Parkside, thinking that would be helpful. And then we had some issues with construction in the parking lot. I'm sure everyone's heard of it, with the apartment building blowing up. And then after that, everyone in the eatery seemed to just become very much about their own businesses and not part of any kind of a community. So that's been a huge struggle for me. Is I'm a very community-oriented person, and I'm having a hard time getting everyone else to be on board and supportive as a collective. So that was, if I were to do it again, I would do a standalone space.
Part of the idea of community, though, I imagine, is you must have found community within the intolerance and allergy community. What was that process like, and how did you develop those relationships?
That's a great question. That was another surprise for me, was that I don't get a lot of foot traffic. So my guests were actually putting me on different apps that were very helpful. They would put me on Find Me Gluten-Free and Happy Cow, and Google was very helpful. So I discovered that trying to attract people into the store with just random people wasn't working. But I get all kinds of people through the apps, people at the hospital that come into town for their families or themselves, and people driving through from the east, because there's absolutely nothing in the small towns, east of here, or even the states east of here. So it became more about putting the word out digitally and getting people specifically to come to me. And so that's what I do. Only about 10% of my traffic is just drop-in people. Everyone is very focused on finding Gina's Kitchen.
As you mentioned, Gina's Kitchen is inside of Aurora's Parkside Eatery, which is a very unique venue right near the town center at Aurora. It also shares a space near a large apartment building, which, as you mentioned, suffered a devastating explosion a while back. How did that event affect your business, and have you seen a bounce back since that time?
It really was devastating, David. I I was a really early morning business, the only one. And so I tried to continue breakfasts, but losing that captive audience, all the breakfast people went away. So then I ended up a lunch and dinner place, which is fine. But I just don't think we got to grow. We didn't have the opportunity to grow in a normal arc. So we were just flatlined for the longest time. The landlords finally, in May, I think, started to re-rent the space, the apartments. It's about 40% full, but in all honesty, I don't really notice a difference. I feel like I still am reliant on and very appreciative of the people who come and find me. It's definitely not even a factor. And whether it would have ever been, I don't even know. There's no way to go back and say, oh, we'd be in such a better place if it hadn't blown up, because it doesn't seem to make a difference now at 50% capacity. So I don't know.
Gina's Kitchen is part bakery, part bistro. Was that the plan all along for it to develop into more broad offerings? And how has that concept evolved since you opened?
Thank you for asking that. That part has been really great. Initially, because I was a bakery before, most people weren't used to the hot food offerings. I've been finding, though, that if it wasn't for having both hot and bakery, I wouldn't be in business, because they basically are about 50% of the business each. Yeah. Sometimes, one beats the others, but most of the time it's just head to head. People are interested in both. So some people are like, well, it's a struggle to stretch yourself like that. Maybe you shouldn't do food. Maybe you shouldn't do bakery. And I'm like, well, then I'll be out of business, because both are a huge need in my neighborhood.
On the other side of that, you could have easily named the business Gina's Bakery, and then you've painted yourself into a corner, or you have to do a full rebrand to articulate to the market that you do more than bake. So it was probably a good foresight to make it Gina's Kitchen, so that you can do whatever you need to do as you grow and expand.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you. Yeah, for pointing that out. That's very true. And I've had a hard time getting the landlord to recognize that we are hot food and bakery. And I told him when we first moved in, we're more than a bakery. And even like 2 months ago, he was like, don't try to change your brand, Gina, do the bakery. And I'm like, we're not just a bakery. So I printed up papers for my food baskets that say we're not just a bakery anymore. And it's actually something I'm promoting out as a slogan so that people recognize this.
Getting back to the art of what you do, how do you balance the creative aspects of menu planning with the practical considerations of running a successful business?
I don't know that I'm very effective at the balancing part, because I get so excited about creating new things. I think we're probably up to about 150 different baked goods now that litter our wall. We have a wall of magnets of all the labels of everything. So I think I probably drive my staff crazy, because every time they come in, there's something new in the case. But the customers love it. They love that they can get their standbys, their good old doorbells that they just absolutely love, and their cookies. And then what has Gina created now? What's the new thing in the case? So it's hard, because it's a lot of stuff, but I definitely am more creative in the bakery than I am in the food. The food, it's a little bit more challenging and less efficient to be innovative and spontaneous and impromptu on the hot food side, because I'd have to change the menu and I'd have to do all of those things. But bakery, I can kind of slide things in under the radar.
Are there certain menu offerings or recipes that you get particularly excited about?
Yes, I've discovered I make really good soup. I didn't know. I was always so scared of soup. And now everyone who comes in, they're just like, your soup is my favorite thing. So I'm very excited that I've mastered the soup. I've mastered the bread. And I get very, very excited about making all things chocolate. So that's my favorite, is the chocolate.
I asked this question on another episode. I'm always fascinated by those in the culinary arts. Is baking more difficult than traditionary culinary skills or other culinary skills? There's an added layer of science to baking, I feel.
There is, and I love science.
Yeah.
I think some people feel that way because with cooking, you can just put a splash of this and, a little pinch of that, which I definitely cook that way. That also drives my staff crazy because they can't replicate any of my recipes when I'm doing the soups and such. Baked goods, though, I think once you figure out your basic science of the flour, what needs to happen, the leavening, the stuff that creates the glutinous effect, any of that, then you can just be creative on top of it.
Yeah.
So I think years ago, I was scared of it, but now I don't have the same. I feel like you can be just as creative as once you understand the underlying science of it.
But the underlying science of quote unquote traditional baking is algebra 3, right? When you're now integrating these gluten-free technologies and dietary restrictions and allergies and sensitivities, you're now doing advanced calculus, I imagine. How much more difficult is it when you have to take into account these quote unquote non-traditional ways of baking?
Fair enough. I think that that's a really good point. I have had to become somewhat of a nutritionalist because I need, knowing what people's allergens are and how I can replace, if they can't have this type of nut, then that's replacing the oil in the recipe. So then what would be a good alternative? Also, I had this gentleman come in just the other day. He can't have any nightshades and he wanted pizza crust, and our pizza crust has potato starch in it. So he was just so excited that I was going to try to adapt something for him, and we mapped it out on the board, and we were doing 155 grams of this and that, and we were able to replace the potato starch with a ratio of probably like 3-to-1 of arrowroot and sweet rice flour. And so I gave him 3 different choices that had arrowroot, that had tapioca starch, and then the sweet rice flour. And so he picked the one that was best for his mouth feel. And so we were able to create a whole new product for him. So that was fun. And you're right, it does take some science and knowledge and understanding how those other starches react. Because some of them, if you put too much tapioca starch or arrowroot in something, it ends up like boogers versus versus cornstarch, Yeah.
It's a true convergence, though, of art and science.
That's me. I'm an art and scientist because I love computer science and physics and math, but I am a performing artist and cook as well.
You literally just touched on my next question, but I'd like for you to delve into it even more. Given your commitment to offering allergy-sensitive food that tastes delicious, how do you approach the process of adapting traditional recipes to meet gluten-free and vegan requirements while maintaining that high standard of taste? How else is that manifested?
Google helps a lot because there are so many different flours and starches that I've not even ever heard of. I'm actually wanting to start to play with sorghum flour a little bit more. Excuse me, that I was a little bit more nervous about in the past. But basically just getting to know your product, getting to know the ingredients and understanding how they chemically react to each other and what their viscosity is or what their consistency is. If you add liquid, if you don't, if you need to add extra baking soda, versus baking powder, and so I just think each little individual ingredient reacts differently with the other. So it's just becoming very familiar with all of the aspects of your ingredients.
There seems to have been a lot of advances in food technology, particularly in the last decade, compared to when you first started your dietary quest. What are some of the biggest innovations you've seen over the last decade for those with allergies or dietary intolerances? What are the big game changers out there?
I think it's all the starches, to be honest. We've got cassava, which comes from the root of a yucca plant. I mean, who would think that that's something that you can cook with, And I used to make tortillas out of it and found out that that's actually a Native American tradition, is that they use that for the starch in their foods. So that one, and then the different types of sugars. I'm not an artificial sweetener person. Stevia is probably something that I like to use because it comes off of a plant. But now there's monk fruit, and there's date sugar and sweet potato sugar and beet sugar and all of this stuff that's really natural that you can use that has less glycemic load than normal sugar. It's not processed. And who would have thought that, somebody who's having candida or gut allergies to a regular sugar could actually have, a sweet potato sugar or a date sugar. So I think that's really cool that people have options.
We talk about inclusion in a cultural sense and in workplaces, and it's really interesting that you're creating an environment of inclusivity through your work. Do you feel a sense of responsibility to embrace people that maybe feel cast aside by traditional food?
Absolutely, I do. I think it's so important for inclusivity in any environment. Yeah. And when it happens with food, it's it's painful because we show love through food. Mm-hmm. We have social interactions and connections with people through food. And for years, going to an event or a work event or something where I have to bring my own food or I have to sit and just drink tea because there's nothing else for me to have.
Right.
It's hard and it's sad. So being able to provide product that everyone can have, and that's one of my other slogans that I try to do, is that there's something for everyone at Gina's, and be able to see their faces when they come in and they're so excited that they have choices, and it's not just sit down and you can take all of the bread and cheese and everything off of a hamburger and you have a piece of meat on a plate. It's not like that, so being able to provide all that is very, very important to me. And if someone has a family member or a group of friends that are stubborn and they don't want to eat gluten-free because they think they don't have to or they shouldn't or they don't even want to try it, coming to the eatery is great because then they can have fried chicken or they can have tacos, and the friend who can't have those other things can still get something from Gina's, and we can all sit and have a meal.
There's a surprising lack of empathy for folks with dietary intolerances because sometimes people believe it's a fad or a cliche or attention grabbing, which that's got to be absolutely frustrating because there's real physical implications as to why you're taking these things out of your diet. Have you seen an improvement in, I guess, the stigma of people with dietary intolerances? Has that changed? Has that gotten better?
I think it depends on where you are. I completely agree with you and some people they just want to get rid of it because it's a fad or because they think it's going to help them lose weight or, but there are those of us who really do struggle with it. And, I had a homeopathic doctor one time tell me, if you want to be safe in a restaurant, Gina, and they ask you if you're celiac, just say yes, even if you're not, because that's the only way you can guarantee they're going to protect you. Because if they think it's just a choice, they're going to be less helpful, and it could put you at risk. And I thought that was really sad. I don't want to have to lie and say something that may not be true. So I think that the perception is kind of changing a little bit. I think, I did have someone come in just the other day and they were like, do you make non-gluten cakes? And I was like, no, we try to keep we keep gluten, dairy, egg, and peanuts out of our store, etc. And he's like, oh, well, I'm going to go find a gluten-full cake. And I was like, fine,
okay.
It's fine.
Target's next door.
Exactly. So we do have the perception that people still think we're weird and they're not sure what if they should try it. So we try to give out samples as much as possible to help people understand that it's just food. It's regular food. Most people don't even know that it has allergen restrictions on the food. So I don't know. It just depends. And then if you go to a small town, absolutely, the perception has not changed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Your personal experience helps guide the menu at Gina's Kitchen, but talk about some of the feedback that you've gotten from customers about your offerings with similar dietary needs and how affirming that must be.
Oh, it's wonderful. It makes me feel so good. And I'm so happy when I get a good review or when somebody, a child starts crying because they have something that they can have for their birthday. And I just get really excited about that feedback. Most people are very grateful. I have people who want to volunteer at the store because they know that we're still struggling. And so we don't have the money to hire. I don't have the money to hire enough people to be able to help and give me time off. And they're so worried that we're going to go under or that I'm going to burn out. And so they're just volunteering. I have people volunteering to hand out flyers. And it's just really sweet the way that the gluten allergy sensitive and also the vegan community have just really come forward to help support us. And they're all very grateful that we're here.
Given the specialized focus on gluten, egg, peanut, and dairy-free options, how do you approach sourcing ingredients to not only maintain the quality and integrity of your allergy-sensitive dishes, but also to remain competitive in a price, I guess, perspective?
Yeah, that has really been hard. A lot of our product is, our materials are sourced from retail. So I've been working with Cisco quite a bit, actually, to try to get more of the allergy-sensitive items in their store, their warehouse. But right now it's still mostly Amazon. I've been able to cut back on natural grocers a little because Cisco warehouse is starting to carry more of the alternative stuff that natural grocers would provide. I was able to get more of the alternative flours online through Webstront store, which is, I have to have a membership, so it's still is expensive, but it's not as expensive as, say, buying it in smaller items through Amazon. So yeah, we're still struggling there. And I would like to be able to come up with more large scale bulk kind of options for our ingredients. It does cost more for us, so we have less of a profit margin. And I struggle with that too, because we need to still make a living, but I don't want to raise my prices for my customers.
Right.
So we're kind of trying to balance that and see if we can get away with not having to do that this year.
A very powerful aspect of running and operating a business, particularly one that sells foods, is the consumer reviews that you can find online. To what degree do you go down the rabbit hole of internet reviews, and does it impact the way you approach your business at all?
I get mostly good reviews. So that's a good thing. But I do get some that I get frustrated with some of them because they are some that are lower reviews about pricing or about the size of the product. Or, one woman was really upset because she thought that I only used olive oil in the store, and she found out I also used palm shortening or palm oil. So it was just interesting because I get these people that have a struggle with Gina's Kitchen, and so they write it down in a review for all the world to see, and I'll thank them for the review and explain it and try to have a conversation with them offline to make their experience better, but then they just never respond. So I don't really change the way I do business, but it does affect me because I want everyone to be okay. And if I did something, or if one of my employees did something that was a struggle for them, I'd love for them to just come to me, talk to me. I will make it right. I'm a really nice lady.
Yeah.
And I just want everyone to be okay and have a good experience.
Well, and a lot of those quote unquote issues could be resolved with a little understanding, a 30-second conversation, but sometimes people just want to feel a sense of superiority. So here's their chance to assert their authority on the internet, but it can actually have a detrimental impact on these businesses. And I don't think everybody fully grasps that there are real people and their dreams are tied to these businesses, and they want a positive experience for everybody who walks through that door. And sometimes just a little actual personal contact would create that understanding. Do you still get to express yourself in the performing arts, or has Gina's Kitchen commandeered all of your time?
It has commandeered 150% of my time, to be honest. I do sponsor, though, karaoke at the Parkside Eatery every other Saturday, which I pay for myself because it's really important to me to still bring music and creativity to Parkside. So I get to sing there, which is really lovely.
Incredible singer. I've known Gina for a long time. She's a very good singer.
Thank you, David. I also do Wednesdays work wind down Wednesdays, where we have musicians come in, and sometimes those musicians are part of Pure Sound, which was the band I was in for a while. So Tim and Michael will set up and sing, and then I can pop in and do a couple things with them. So I get to perform a little bit there, but otherwise, no, my performance is just bakery and eatery now. But
you talked a little bit earlier about community building at Parkside Eatery. If it's not a built-in culture, maybe you create a community, and it sounds like you're starting to do that a little bit. So that's got to feel pretty good.
Yeah, it really is. I love to bring creative arts to Parkside. And as a matter of fact, I represent artists there as well. I have them with their art on the wall. We have a jewellerist now. We've got Katie Critters, and it's a wonderful little crocheting critters that she makes. So I definitely want to keep, community support and art in Parkside for sure.
Looking forward, what's the evolution of Gina's Kitchen?
Well, I can't really say publicly yet, but we might be expanding to another place. It would not be removing from Aurora. We would still be in Aurora, but because of the fact that I'm struggling so much in the current store, I feel like if we stay where we are, we may not make it. So I'm thinking about expanding and doing a smaller version of Gina's Kitchen in a different town, different city, where it's going to be a little bit more embraced. So hopefully the two of them together will be able to get us far. But if we can't do that right away, then it will eventually happen. Boulder and Fort Collins are where I would like Gina's Kitchen to go ultimately, and just keep expanding as we go.
If there's anything that I want to come out of this conversation for those listening on their phones or on their desktop or in the car or wherever they are, it's that, yes, Gina's Kitchen is an amazing place for those with dietary restrictions, allergens, intolerances. But beyond that, it's just a great place for great food. Don't let the fact that Gina serves gluten-free, vegan options, that there aren't things on her menu that you're gonna absolutely love, because I'm a testament to that. I'm a full glutinous carnivore, and I love everything that Gina serves. It's delicious food, it's done well, it's done with love, and you owe it to yourself to go check it out. You're depriving yourself of great food if you stop short of going into Gina's because you believe it's only for people with dietary restrictions. It's not the case.
Thank you so much, David. That was very sweet, and I appreciate you very much.
I appreciate you as well, Gina. Thank you for taking the time. Make sure you visit Gina's Kitchen at Parkside Eatery at 14515 East Alameda Avenue at the corner of Alameda and Sable. Check out her menu now at ginaskitchenparkside.com, and make sure to follow on social media as well at Gina's Kitchen Parkside. Thank you for listening to the Gateway to the Rockies podcast. Visit Aurora is the official destination marketing organization for the city of Aurora, Colorado, and acts as the primary liaison between meeting planners and hotel partners. As Aurora's Convention and Visitors Bureau, Visit Aurora's mission is grounded in showcasing Aurora as a premier destination for meetings, business, and leisure travel. Visit Aurora represents more than 75 plus hotel properties with 13,500 plus guest rooms and more than 1 million square feet of meeting space, including Colorado's largest resort, Gaylord Rockies Resort and Convention Center. As Colorado's third largest city, Aurora is located minutes away from Denver International Airport and showcases mountain views, memorable meeting spaces, and 250 plus international eateries that offer a unique experience for each and every visitor. As the gateway to the Rockies, Visit Aurora's role in the local community goes beyond marketing the city as a destination. The Visit Aurora team is here to assist you with your Colorado visit, from facilitating your meeting, event, or convention to helping you discover local flavor and attractions. Go beyond the boardroom in Aurora, Colorado. For more, visit us at visitaurora.com.